Good evening, everyone. Can I get your attention, please? Hello, hello. There's space around here. If people need to come around, you can go around the outside and come up onto the tables, or you can come up by the food. You can sit there all night, enjoy the food. So tonight's split audience. We've got people online, which is interesting, so we'll get potentially questions later on. Thank you so much for coming. This event, we weren't too sure how many people were going to get, what the interest was going to be. I've been checking with some people what the expectations were. They probably have none or low, which is good. So really the idea here is to talk to people outside doing business themselves. We're doing business inside of government, and it's really to connect us and see if there's any opportunities. So thank you again for coming. I appreciate it's after work and you've rushed here. Hopefully the food's good and makes up for it. We'll probably finish early, so respect to you if you want to go home. There's a Q&A panel just before then. There's probably a chance if you want to duck off. We will send through the slides and the videos afterwards, so if you miss half of it, part of it, or all of it, we'll get it through to you. There's some tight deadlines around turning around, working and connecting, so I'll go through those later. It's what we say is it's government, but it's not like government, the way we're working, so I'm really keen and excited about the opportunity we've got. So start off with housekeeping. So toilets are just here in the front, and fire exits. There's one here, and there's one over there out to the street. That one's faster. Don't run through the revolving door, it stops. So that's pretty much it. I don't think there's anything else other than there's food, so you're more than welcome. There's mocktails to go around at any point around the side if you need, and hopefully you should still be able to hear. So the agenda, we're fortunate enough to have Liz come along and present, talk a little bit about the start and a few things. There's the Data Ventures story, which we'll get through for anyone who's not familiar, which I imagine is a few. Then we're talking about 4 of our main ventures. Then there's other opportunities outside of that, which we'll highlight, which is where we're looking to around we scale, and we scale through using others other than ourselves. Next steps, so talking about what's coming up, what we should do, how we work together, and Q&A panel, which I'm looking forward to. I expect some really hard questions, which are really fun. We've got a couple that we can start ourselves, and we've got online people who have some questions first. And then gather and mingle. So thank you again. I'll start off with Liz, who's able to, I'm humbled to have this opportunity, and Liz has been the one who's enabled me to have this opportunity and build a team. And it's a really big thing. That's the thing I can't stress enough. Stats has led this, and I've been able to follow the lead. So thank you, Liz.
Kia ora tātou. It's great to be here this evening. Not so long ago, this was a bit of a twinkle in my eye. The idea that an organisation like Stats could actually be pushing the boundaries in New Zealand, and particularly for government. The idea that we could take Stats New Zealand IP and knowledge and partner with the private sector and others to create new value, and to earn some revenue along the way. So unashamedly, we are doing that, and as I said to Drew, we've created what I hope feels like a start-up, even though it is within a government department. So we have a board, and we have revenue targets, and Drew is held accountable for those, as are the venture managers, who I'm delighted to see here today with their orange dots on. This is an experiment. It is an experiment to see whether we can actually innovate in a commercial way within a government department. We can partner in the true sense of the word. So one of the things we're testing here as well is, from my perspective, when governments talk about partnership, they're usually talking about procurement. I actually want to push the boundaries on that, and I've been very clear with my Treasury and MB colleagues that that's what I'm doing. So one of the things here I want to do is actually push those thresholds as well and test what we can do. From my perspective, I want to be very clear. I need to be a bit further this way. I want to be very clear that what we're doing is we're leveraging off Stats NZ IP. This is not about selling Stats data, but it is potentially about creating new data through partnering. And that data would be available to the people of New Zealand and be available to Stats to be create additional value of. And the other thing that we're looking to do is to really learn from operating models that are out there, to innovate with the innovators, and for you to help us have a really disruptive edge to the organisation, so we can keep learning. So for me, thank you so much for coming. It's just delightful to have you all here, and I'm really looking forward to what we can do together. This very first event where we're actually looking at how Data Ventures works with all of you. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Drew.
Cool, thank you. So this is a little bit now around what Liz was talking about, Data Ventures, and a bit more detail around how we work and operate. So as Liz said, there's a commercial arm, so there's a revenue aspect, but it's not the only aspect. That's to be really clear. Is one of the big things, as Liz said, is the private partnerships. So sometimes it's not just organisations, limited liability companies, it's NGOs, it's iwi, it's other communities too. The three goals we have, as Liz alluded to, two of them. They're create an alternative revenue stream for stats. So there is a nature of some of the things we really want to do and what people need from stats. Sometimes we aren't funded for, and this is an opportunity to partner to achieve those things with others, and then we can generate that value, not just revenue for each of us in the partnership, but also the value back to New Zealand. And also prototyping new operating models. So as everyone knows, government works in a different way, a good, bad, whatever, distinctively different way. This is a chance to show you that government can, within the legislation, within the rights, that we can do and work the way you do. There are just sometimes obligations which we will take on and protect or field from you as much as possible, but ultimately we are government. So a new front door for stats as well. So this is to show the new reputation, which is why there's a brand, a difference. It's still a circle, but it's a slightly odd circle, which is what we like to think of ourselves. And that's effectively to serve existing customers differently and to find new customers and partners. So what is Data Ventures? Ultimately, it comes in 6 flavours, separate from stats. So we see ourselves not with privileged access to stats data. We have the same access to stats data that all of you have. And that's to start off on the basis of open data, and we work with that and show the value of it. The other part is that we're building, as Liz said, building on Stats NZ IP, and that's not just the things and the methodologies we have, but it's the people. So we've got some expertise there, we've got experience with a wide range of data sets, and we can bring that together with you. So everything's a joint venture, which is the theme tonight, and that's the thing we're testing. Really one of the big parts of the experiment is who's willing to work with us in this capacity. And effectively, it's not just the private sector, as I mentioned, it's iwi, central local government, private companies, not-for-profits, all that sort of stuff. So we've got an openness to us, naturally, as government. We've tried to be as open as possible, but we're a small team, so we can't open everything. We open up our lean canvases, we're trying to show up what we're trying to do, we're trying to open up that early so people can see what they're working on already, and they can work with us. We might be reinventing the wheel in some of these ideas, but the opportunity is to show that we are thinking about these ideas. So from there, the ultimate goal for me is that we don't get any requests for information. It's typically known as a bad thing. I want to spin it around as a positive thing, that we've got everything out there and no one needs to do anything more. And if they want to, they can email us and we'll tell them. But one of the cool things is we're also open about things like revenue targets. We're real clear and apparent, and you'll see some KPIs and being held accountable to those rather than you asking through maybe a less favourable method in some other people's eyes. So backed by the Stats NZ reputation, it's really, really important. The trust and ethics, it's the thing I'm humbled by. Doing young companies, you're always trying to build reputation. I'm very grateful to have a reputation to start off with, and that's really helped step things forward. And then finally, there is an element to stats, which is growing stats. It's alternative revenue streams, operating models, new ways of doing things. So a unique approach to this is that everything is commercial, but also has a non-commercial aspect. So that's back to New Zealand, back to the value there. We have got a revenue that's required to make things self-sustainable. Profit's not the word, it's always about building revenue to be able to do other things and where that money goes back to. But there's also a value back to New Zealand. And that can be in ways which you'll see in Ventures soon, which is effectively some things might work on the value of data when it's there, and then when it's lesser value or there's other uses for it, we give it away for free for the population to use. So it's not just testing the opportunities, but the partnerships. So again, this event is one of these things. Every data set we acquire, so sometimes these data sets that stats would love to get, but just not feasibly to fund or buy. Some of the aspects are that we can acquire that data set in a commercial sense, feed it back to stats, and then there's other benefits through CPI, GDP. And the other part is really that pushing anything through that fails. We really want to push our learnings out. So it's our customer research, it's our learning canvases, it's our business models, trying new business models, attempting new things, and we'll push those learnings out through, it's geeky, but it's through GitHub, at least people can get access to it. We also push it through blog posts and tweets where possible, so non-technical people can get through, but ultimately we're trying to use it in a place where people can already see open source stuff. So this is our mission. It's a little bit cliche, but it's really clean and simple because it's new for government, new for us, is to bring together the public and private sectors to build effectively economic and social value for New Zealand. We're trying to prototype new ventures and new ways of doing stuff. Sometimes it's the way you've been doing it for years and we're just trying it for the first time, but that's still new. So what is a joint venture? Really in the eyes of us and how we're experimenting and testing, is it setting the expectations up front about how we as government can and cannot work with private, but also show you how we can manage the parts where we can't. So an OIA is an example. There'll be a concern that working with us, that someone might OIA us and all of a sudden your IP is out into the world through a request. We've got a really good way to handle the narrative around it, to handle the considerations and make sure there's good things. We'll say who we're working with because we're open around that, but what we're working on, that's the stuff we work on and work through. Sharing the risk, again, so that's one of the things Liz has been amazing, is having the opportunity to share risk and actually show we're putting risk on the table. That's another thing for government. We're willing to lead where others wouldn't normally lead, and that's created opportunities in some of these ventures you're seeing today. The other part is respecting your intellectual property, and that's one of the feedback I've heard the most about working with private, is government might have a tendency sometimes to take your IP and then sell it to or give it to everyone else in government. We got an MOU to understand that the IP we're working with you is fenced off, and only the use cases that everyone agrees to is then used. And then finally, roles and responsibilities. And I think this personally coming from the commercial world is just a problem anyway, is clarifying your roles and responsibilities in a partnership. Sometimes the large things don't deliver because these aren't clear. Sometimes they go out of scope. It's just a typical problem, and just acknowledging that that's something we can see. So we've got a memorandum of understanding which I will send out after this. It's our attempt to go, coming from the private world, working in public. These are the things and considerations we're considering when working with you. Love to get feedback. Additionally, we're doing a session with some private lawyers, public lawyers, and some businesses. So again, I'll send out an invite for you to get involved. It's a 2-hour session, first in, first served. And then from there, we're going to shape an MOU where we can understand in the best ways. So when we come in, we go, it's not just our silly thinking, it's also a few others. So we have a pipeline. This is where parts think of us like an incubator, but ultimately it's just due diligence. It's product validation. It's the market research. So we sit in a few fields and gates. So the fields are where you work on your part of your venture. Each of those fields have a checklist. We do that checklist of just things you've got to achieve. There's criteria behind that. That criteria may shift and change according to the market, but that's fine. And so ultimately, once you pass those, you go through the next one, and the next one, next one. And ultimately, thank you. Ultimately, start off in an early opportunity where you do a little bit of work, and obviously when you get product to market, that's when you need your funding and investment, you need to present to the board, you need to get your investment. Obviously there's a lot more needed to know around that venture then. So for us, success, we've got effectively 18 months since we started in November. Our goal is, in our fields, we have, sorry, I was taking a drink of water, 2 seconds. We have 10 ventures. We have a few fields, and MVP, as most people know, minimum viable product, or proof of concept is also known as. We want to get 10 of those into, and that's proving, it seems simple, but it's just getting the groundwork done. It's the stats doing this. Is it okay for government to do this? Who wants to work with us on these types of things? What kind of ventures? It just seems so easy as a young company or a private company to go, oh, 10, I could knock those through in a week. It's the 10 partnerships. So again, everything's a partnership. So behind those ventures, we want to find partners. So again, that's why it's not so easy. It's the first time we're doing this. One of these reaching product in the market. So that's validation of getting in, getting through, validating, finding partners, finding customers, paying. 5 ventures being released open source. That's the big thing there, is that we're releasing the stuff that hasn't succeeded. So if we're aiming for 10, but not all of them make it through, then obviously we're going to open this stuff up so that others can pick up from it, even you. I mean, we'll be so proud if the effort and investment we made into a venture didn't succeed because it was us, but someone picked up because there was enough collateral, enough IP released, you can then take that forth. That would be amazing. So we keep improving, again, iterative stuff, keep improving our fields and pipelines. 10 plus customers advisory group, that's just getting people like yourself on the board, giving us feedback. We've got a large advisory group now, so I'm really proud of that. And then also 20 plus people inside of Stats are part of the Data Ventures experience. So we're bringing one of the operating model sides through, they learn about what we're doing, take it back into the business and organisation. So now we're on to the first ventures, which I will be presenting the first, and then I'll be handing over as we go through them to other venture managers. We'll start off with this one because it's quite a niche. As later they get a bit more probably wider to your understanding, but this is really valuable for Stats. This is taking some of Stats' real IP, the things it does behind the products and outputs that you use, and effectively bringing the credibility that we do behind that to understand how credible these outputs are, and sometimes the things we need to do to improve those. So effectively, it's an organisation that releases their own stats. Often they don't have maturity behind the processes. Sometimes it's the Xero Small Business Insights. That's a new concept for them to bring all that data together. They're learning around that side. There's also the TIN network where they bring the data of businesses together. Those are examples of official statistics that aren't stats. And so really one of the things that come from that is those are great, and when they're outputted, everyone looks at them, but when they're scrutinised, particularly like a business confidence survey recently, that thing when they get into the guts of it, they realise that sometimes the processes weren't as mature. You might go and do your own research and say those numbers don't fit up. That's the problem, because when you drill into it, unfortunately sometimes it highlights a hole and it destroys the credibility of all that work you've done to release those official stats. So the opportunity there is to create a credibility score, and effectively the next steps behind that for you to improve that. So I'd like to think of it being as accessible as something for small businesses to get a low score, but acknowledge it's a low score, and they know the steps they need to do. They don't have the effort, the resource and things behind that. Where we find this is that there's more and more statistics being released from others. Reserve Bank work with us using this product at the moment. They've been doing a lot of work. NZTA is working with us on this product as well. So we're really keen to take this out and out into the private world. So a solution, excuse the wonderful grid, I can explain it. Effectively it's creation of that score we said. The next steps, the things you need to know, and really it comes down to some of the culture behind the people in your team, the way you do things, the acknowledgement of that the data isn't 100% correct. It helps build capability and credibility of these businesses. And effectively it takes all these aspects that we test. It's a process that we run through, could be anywhere from 3 weeks to 5 weeks, and we get these scores based on these different aspects and give you an overall score. And that overall score gives the credibility and also those next steps. So effectively that's one of our things that we're really proud of, that we do ourselves, and we see the opportunity for this in the market. So who we're looking for are currently people who either offer existing assurance products. We want to really work with you to add to your offering, to increase your offering. And also it's a way that you might get a step in the door to just go, here's a really easy way to get in, and effectively those next steps become your consulting or your next upsell. So that's the way we can see to help you get in more business. So now what I'm going to do is hand over to Rob, who's going to talk to you about something else.
Thanks, Drew. Kia ora everyone, and hello everyone on the live stream. It's kind of interesting for us that we have a live stream, so we're doing it in both physical and digital form. So today I'm going to talk to you about the venture that I'm looking after, which is called SoloMo. And I'm just going to tell you a quick story about how this came about. So about 3 months ago, myself and Drew were in a workshop with a whole bunch of different agencies, and we're just having a conversation about data and data gaps. And one of the interesting points that came out from that was that there wasn't enough coverage of the data to help with very large infrastructure projects, and just identifying where travel patterns or movement of groups of people are. And the frequency wasn't there, and there wasn't an agreed upon standard, and there was just a whole heap of problems. And Drew and I thought to ourselves, well, that's very interesting, because if we look at the Lean Canvas, which is one of the fields that we take our ventures through, it actually are two components of the Lean Canvas that those questions and problems are filled out in that particular space. So as a result of that, the problem that from the conversation that we came up with was that the current data sets that are available to government, they don't provide the coverage or the accuracy needed to inform and review the decisions. So a couple of the topics of the conversation that we had during that workshop was, if you can think in terms of response planning for earthquakes. So we had an earthquake both in Wellington and in Christchurch not too long ago, that the impact of an earthquake at midnight versus 4 p.m. is significantly different. And as a group of individuals that are trying to plan where the responses should be, knowing where the concentration of people are is very important, because you can allocate response based on the concentration of people. Another example is one that's very topical at the moment is the impact of transport changes. So if you look at our buses and our bus services at the moment, you would notice that there's probably going to be a lot of impact in terms of your own personal behaviour when it comes to your own transport needs. And having some data points to give you some insights around what the impact of that is relatively important, especially just for planning and future-proofing. So, the opportunity that we saw is that, well, what is a good way to help figure out where groups of people are? And we thought, well, everyone carries a phone. In New Zealand, there's 120, or I think it's about 120 devices per individual in the country. So it's kind of mind-blowing that there's more than one device per individual, but a lot of us also carry our personal and our work phone as well. So it's just a good way to actually get a proxy of the total population of New Zealand. And what we're thinking is, what we can do is bring together all the mobile provider data, and that can give us at least a base coverage of the movements of people across the country. So for those of you that don't know, when you use your mobile device, they ping your specific phone to give an indication of where you are. So they have cell sites all across the country, and through triangulation, they get a sense of where the concentration of people are. So using this particular data sets, and when you combine them together, it gives you a really good indication of where concentration of people are and movements are. So, the market and customers. So initially we're going to look at working with government agencies that make a lot of decisions that involve the movement of people. And we've already started a little bit of a pilot. So we've got 6 agencies that are working in our pilot group, and that includes an industry body that represents over 100 smaller organisations. And we have another 12 organisations or government agencies that we're talking to that are very interested in what we're doing. And the solution that we're proposing is a geospatial interface or application that displays aggregated people movements at different geographical resolutions and different time periods. So it gives them the ability to just see different patterns of movement. And in this example here, it just shows all the net inflows into Wellington at a given time. So what type of partners are we looking at? Well, essentially we're looking for experts that can apply existing or new methodologies with the data and can help us build meaningful interfaces with our customers. So that's my venture in a nutshell, and at the conclusion of the presentation, I'll be happy to field any questions or continue the conversation if there's any interest in that. But thank you, and I'm going to hand it over to Jamie. Fantastic. Who's going to talk about his venture.
Great, thanks Rob. So my name is Jamie Marshall. I'm one of the venture managers, and I'm here to talk to you about my venture, Top Down. So the idea of Top Down is that we will be looking at the ability to see New Zealand from 7,000 feet to help people make better decisions about the environment or business within New Zealand. So our problem statement here is that within New Zealand we have an issue about the lack of up-to-date aerial imagery. Now, aerial imagery is used for a wide number of things. Planning, consultants use it for development. There are environmental aspects to it where you can see water, you can see land, you can see the changes in that. But the frequency that we have in the publicly available data sets in aerial imagery are so coarse that we can't actually use them effectively for long periods of time. As an example, we have a 5-year cycle of aerial photography that we have in New Zealand, and I'm sure a lot of people can appreciate that the amount of change that happens in a period of 5 years is great. There's pretty much new townships being developed outside of Auckland, urban expansion, environmental degradation, environmental improvement, but we don't have the resolution and the frequency of the photos being taken to be able to see that very accurately or clearly. Now, one of the reasons we don't have it so frequently is that New Zealand is Aotearoa, land of the long white cloud, it's very hard to take photographs through clouds, so you have trouble seeing a lot of New Zealand for a lot of the time. Now, this is one of the things that eliminates satellite imagery from being effective, up-to-date, current. And a lot of the satellite imagery that we do see in New Zealand isn't aggregated over a very long period of time to give you a picture of indeterminate age. The low sun angles in New Zealand, in winter in particular, generate a lot of shadows. So traditional aerial photography does not fly in New Zealand in the depths of winter. Now, I know we're coming into spring. I'm based in Christchurch. Flew up on the ATR this morning, looking out the window, absolutely crystal clear day in Christchurch, Wellington, Kaikoura. You can see everything. So while it's not optimal flying conditions for conventional aerial photography, there are really good opportunities to collect some data in the winter in New Zealand. Another part of the problem we're facing in New Zealand at the moment, and this is an ancillary issue, part of the social feedback that we're looking at for this venture, is that there is a shortage of pilots. Now, there has been some discussions recently about the total number of pilot shortages and the accuracy of the numbers. But if you look at the numbers from Boeing, they're talking about needing something like 790,000 pilots within the next 20 years to be trained worldwide. They've broken that down by geographic region. Airbus is a little more pessimistic, but they are still looking at about 500,000 pilots needed worldwide within the next 20 years. In New Zealand, it's really hard to get that pilot training. A lot of pilots can get trained in New Zealand, and we have excellent facilities and schools for that. But the ability to gain commercial hours within New Zealand is very difficult, and we have a lot of pilots who are leaving New Zealand to get their commercial hours. A lot of them do come back, some of them do not, and others just give up on their commercial aviation careers because there's no opportunities. So we're trying to get an opportunity to solve both of these issues at the same time. Now, what's aerial imagery good for? I think the example of looking out of a plane window and being able to identify a river, or being able to identify where your house is, who's gone onto Google Earth and actually looked at their backyard, there's a real interest thing. And we can do that because we actually recognize what we can see in the imageries. We identify with it, we recognize it, we know that that river is closer to our house than it was 2 years ago, which indicates erosion. So one of the key things that we're looking for here is the ease of understanding, but we're also trying to augment the digital data set so that we can get a lot more imagery to actually detect change at a quicker resolution. So the opportunity here is that we're looking to provide low cost, high resolution imagery, and taking out some of the constraints that we've had previously. So fly under the clouds. The image is a wee bit darker, but it's still usable. Fly during winter. You can see things that you don't see in summer. There's ponding on the fields, there's ponding on the paddocks, there's water everywhere. It's a different environment through different seasons. So to help with this opportunity, we're going to be looking at the underutilised pilots and aircraft in New Zealand at the moment. Look at the opportunity to increase pilot hours and actually have the pilots that are looking for commercial work in New Zealand use small aircraft to be able to augment their hours, build up their hours, and develop their professional careers. So who wants this information? There's a lot of people want this information. We have the broad categories are decision makers. So people who are making policy decisions about where towns are going, they want to know what's there, they want to be able to look at it, they want to see what the land use is. Are there sheep there? Is there gorse there? That's the sort of thing you can see from the aerial photography. Farmers who may want to plot out their farm. Currently, it's a very expensive process to have someone fly $1 million aircraft and photo package over your farm and deliver that product. Change makers, such as developers, again, city councils, central government, people who need to have the latest information to make the best decision on how and when to make change in the environment, roading networks, building extents, there's all sorts of policy information that can be helped with aerial imagery. There's also change watchers. So this is the monitoring and compliance. So again, we're looking at people like central government, Ministry for the Environment, Department of Conservation, who are looking for change, local councils who are looking for change, which may not have been authorised, such as unauthorised buildings, which you can see quite easily from the air, but it's very difficult to get people on the ground into some of these places to see them. There's also the asset managers, and this starts to come into the more commercial model where you have people with assets all over New Zealand, such as roads are an asset, buildings are an asset, iwi interested in land management, your forestry management. So there's a lot of people can use the aerial photography to actually look at, understand where their assets are, and actually be able to plot them and work with those in another geospatial way. The solution we're proposing is pretty ambitious. This excites me quite a bit. We want to lower the cost of camera hardware to put on an airplane. Now at the moment there are a couple of really big players in this market, but to put this into an airplane, as I was talking before, some of the camera gear alone is $500,000 plus the cost of the airplane, plus the cost of fitting it, plus the software, plus, and it's a really big number. So we're looking to get a low-cost camera system that could be taken from one airplane, put onto another airplane, a higher fleet of camera pods, really quickly to put onto the plane and take them off again. You will find the work through the customers that we'll be putting into the venture, some of the customers that we saw before, and then you'll be commissioned to fly that and submit the data into a hopefully automatic data processing center, which will then turn the data around quickly and aggregate it into a geospatial product. This will allow pilots who are wanting commercial hours to stay and fly in New Zealand. We have a test group of pilots that we have been talking to, people who have gone through their commercial licenses recently, and there's been very strong interest in having been able to obtain this sort of work and stay in New Zealand and be able to fly in our very unique conditions that we have in New Zealand. By putting more planes in the sky, having more photos around, having more opportunity to fly, then we'll increase the frequency of the flights and have better data sets to detect change over time. And our goal initially is to look at monthly flying if that's required, but I'm quite optimistic that in some cases we could get into weekly flights to be able to collect aerial photography. We have city councils that are interested in this who want to actually look at it from a daily prospect, and I can't actually see why this wouldn't actually happen. So they're looking at it for simple things like counting cars. You can fly an entire city the size of Christchurch, central area, in about 2 hours. Currently you're looking at about 40 people on foot being able to do all the parking survey in a week. And so we're looking at increasing the efficiencies there. The photo coverage under clouds or in winter I think is something that we definitely want to be able to deliver. There's a lot of valuable information that happens in those periods of time that we want to be able to capture as well. So the partners we're looking for are quite diverse. And when we talk about the joint venture structures that we have for the joint ventures with data ventures, is we may actually have to partner with a number of people to actually deliver this product. The first one we have to do is a camera provider, which is someone who's going to deliver a low-cost camera solution. Not as hard as it sounds. We actually have a number of great companies in New Zealand who are already out there doing this on drones. So this is something that needs to be scalable to cover a bigger area that drones can't get, but the technology is fundamentally the same. I need a camera, I need a GPS, I need a battery, and I need an IMU to work out what the plane's doing. The exciting thing for these guys is that the weight limits that they're facing with drones aren't as critical in the packages that we're looking to put onto planes. We need someone to take the image and process it, so the ability to take a lot of images and put them all together. This is making them useful. We get these images, we get them auto-rectified, geo-referenced, big words for just saying that they're at the right place, and you can actually turn on things like boundary information or other information that we've done through survey to overlay and augment this geospatial data set. We need the pilots and the aircraft owners, so we're talking with aero clubs, existing commercial operators of aerial photography companies, just trying to actually get the feeling out there who will engage, who will do this, and there's quite a lot of excitement about the possibility of doing this one. Not as an everyday event for the aircraft, but something that there's a lot of downtime in these aircraft and they could be utilised through this venture. As we come through to the customer interface and pilot software, we're going to need software developers. So we will have a system where we will tell you where to fly, what altitude, and also have a system that communicates with the camera and make sure everything's working properly. We'll also need a customer interface for ordering, commissioning and delivering the aerial photography. As a part of that, we're looking at Stats New Zealand, who has an excellent geospatial team. to be able to provide base mapped and additional geospatial information to actually make this really data rich and informative information. So that's my venture. It's a pretty big one. We're expecting it to take a little longer than some of the others, but there's a lot of excitement and there's a lot of possibilities for using this data, a lot of interest, and within stats we're seeing a lot of opportunities to use the aerial photography to help augment other data sets and some of the work that's being done in there at the moment as well. So that's my venture, and now I'll hand over to Noriah.
Thank you, Jamie. It's good to see all of you here. I've met a few of you before. To our online community, thank you for being with us, and I look forward to seeing more of you at the end so we can keep the conversation going. I'm Neria, and I'm here to talk about what's left. To set the scene, picture a small business with a bank account. In this bank account comes in money, and this money is $92. There's a $12 GST component to that, and so the amount that actually belongs to the account in the business is $80. What's actually reflecting in the bank account is $92. You have a transaction where you spend $40, and again on that is a GST component that belongs back to the business, and so forth and so forth. This is a problem that small businesses, sole proprietors, partnerships are faced with. They don't have an actual balance of what belongs to them at the end of the day after transacting their business. An example is, how much GST do I put away? When is it due? What are my taxes? And what can I spend right now? When small businesses are in a position to know how much is in their account, they're in a better place to know what their finances look like, which gives them financial literacy. The opportunity at the moment is to develop money in business literacy within small businesses. Small businesses are not really well understood, and therefore they're a market that is not very well serviced. What we're looking to do is to get a channel with young and small businesses to better understand their needs and therefore serve them better. Currently, there are 1.1 million sole owner, proprietor or self-employed businesses in New Zealand. According to the Stats New Zealand website, we'll find that there are 561,000 enterprises. Now, this discrepancy arises because what Stats New Zealand considers to be enterprises are those that are making a significant contribution to the economy. There is an underserved market, which is the rest of them, and that's who we're targeting as our initial target market. Sitting in this market are the businesses that are 0 to 3 years old, with a revenue of about 0 to 500K, as well as 0 to 5 employees. The solution is a mobile responsive app, which is either sitting in your mobile banking or sitting as an independent app that shows you what your actual balance is. In this example, we have $13,000 sitting in the account, where actually $1,000 is GST, shows you when it's due, and what your actual available balance is. Now, this is just a small lens into what we could be able to do. We're also considering things such as provisional tax and your ACC levies, which gives you a real accurate position, a real dynamic balance of what belongs to you at the moment. The type of partners we're looking for as far as this ventures is concerned are developers of mobile applications, APIs, and preferably people who have worked with financial data before. And that's what's left. Thank you.
Thank you, Neria. So on top of those are the ones we're really focusing, where we've got a venture manager taking those forward, looking for partners, looking to get to the market. What we have is a pipeline that has other ventures where we haven't necessarily taken them forward. So an example of them are, a lot of these ventures we've done are because the data isn't there. There are aspirations to do other things, but the reality is the market research has said that data's not there. An example is the aerial surveying. So the regularity, while there's satellite pilots around the CSST and planet.com, still that data's not there because of the clouds and because there's other types of things. So effectively, we could start doing more around the environmental vulnerability modelling, which we wanted to do, but then we got down the stack and basically said, as an MVP, we need to get this data, and there's value to others to do that. So we'd rather be focusing on that, with the opportunity of who we are and to bring that data together with something that Stats and Data Ventures can do. There's other parts where we've looked at used car pricing. There's an opportunity there. the standard of accounts. So we build standards, and there's a commercial understanding of some accounts, but just a broad new approach to a classification, a new approach that Stats hasn't done, and the commercial applications of that. But ultimately the biggest thing is there's a list of other ventures we've got. We've got them in our GitHub repository. We've done a lot of research, so I encourage you to have a look. But equally, the other call to action today is there are things you're doing, we're not. And there are things we can bring that we're not sure what we can bring until we start talking. So I really would love to hear from the themes that you've heard from the venture managers, some of the themes here, and even just a general conversation of what you're up to. There's an opportunity in the joint venture to range from everywhere from just us being involved to add assurance to your small or new product, and that'll help enter the market, or it's about getting in together 50-50 and making something new. So that's our call to action today, really, is finding out what you're up to rather than you just finding out about what we're up to. So the next steps, this is the thing that we're calling on to make this thing speedy. So really, tomorrow we're going to take the recording, so the stream's being recorded as well. We've got the slide decks. We're going to send this out tomorrow, send out the recorded version, and effectively gives you a chance to review, send it to teammates or other parties that you might be interested, for them to have a chance to have a look. But ultimately the deadline is the 7th of September, which is the Friday next week, by 12 p.m. There's an email address which will come up, and that's basically how you get in touch. And it's about telling us about what ventures or your venture that you'd be interested in chatting to us about, and we'll turn around. We've made our week free, well I have, but there's other, and there's Holly, myself, and there's others that we'll get through, and we promise this to you, that we'll resource this and make sure we respond. And effectively by that date, we'll go through on the Monday, on the 10th of September, after the deadline's closed, we'll go through and basically get in touch with people who've shared interest with us. And then ideally, because not everyone can be in person, there might be Auckland, Christchurch, or even out of the country, we're really keen then by the 17th to start having either remote, VC, whatever tool you want to use, we'll use, and effectively get together on that. And it's not a one-way thing. So this is not us deciding to work with you, it's you deciding to work with us as well. So that's one thing I want to be really, really clear. This is about us understanding each other and understanding what we're up to and our priorities. And if there's an alignment, that would be great. If there's one partnership out of this, that would be great. And that's a start. So I know sometimes stepping in and being the first is hard. This is Stats/Data Ventures doing it, kind of putting our step in and our foot forward. So I guess I encourage you, please, to email us, tell us about the ventures you've heard about. We'll send the slide deck. We'll tell us, we've got the names, we've got the other things, just let us know, and we're keen to get in touch. So with that, sorry, we're going to change the mics. I'm going to take the wired one, we're going to take this out, and effectively, just keen to see, was there any questions that anyone had?
I'll start with one.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. This one's for you, Jamie. Why do we need aerial imagery when we have high resolution satellite imagery, Google Earth?
Really good, cool. So the Google Earth imagery is definitely high resolution. It is not typically well time-stamped. So as we were talking before, it is an aggregation of a number of other data sets or images. They're not going to get the entire country flown at once. So what they'll do is they'll get swaths over the country and start stitching that together. The ability to actually download that, interface with that, and use it for geospatial imaging and have constant change detection against it is probably one of the things that limits it at the moment. So they're very good at collecting data, they're not that great at sharing data.
Cool, thank you. Any other questions?
Takes a picture from the top of the land. I worked quite a deal with the parcels. We were interested in what underlay the land. So we saw a picture of the city, and then there's the pipes, the hydrants and stuff like that. Would you think of incorporating both into your imagery?
Maybe not necessarily into the imagery, but it is a really good base map for companies that are locating those services to add them to. So while we may not be doing it straight away, and there are companies that do that, we are also looking at another venture called Ground Up, which is the ability to do ground-based surveying either through LiDAR, photogrammetry, so you're looking at buildings from the street. Think of Google Street View, except what it's giving you is not just a picture, but a 3D model of the road corridors. Same principle, updated really, really quickly. In discussions with that, we started to say, well, is there an authoritative underground collection of where the services are underground? And I think at the moment, without too much digging into it, because we've been on the plate ahead of that, is no, there's not. So each of the infrastructure companies are responsible for their own services, but there's nothing coordinated for everyone. So yes, it's a really good idea, and it is kind of tickling back here.
I think if you coordinate with the fire service, you find actually you do have very good underground information.
Yes.
And this is all part of the infrastructure that's hugely important to them, both above the ground and underground, and I'm sure for other people as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that'll be a great starting point, and I'd love to catch up about that.
Anyone else in the audience? Oh.
Hey there. So firstly, just a comment. I think incredibly courageous coming out with these ventures and asking people for participation. I think that's great. I wanted to understand a little bit more about how tied you are to your solutions, because I think the problems are obviously the key part here. I want to understand sort of the degrees of freedom that you think you'd have around those solutions in terms of the data sources and the methods there.
Okay,
or are they kind of locked in at this point?
Yeah, look, great question. I guess it's probably a question for all three, as well as myself at the same time. So there's no lock-in to data sets. One of the things I love to find out from one of you is go, actually, no, that's not the right data set. You should use something else. Why are you using telco data? You should be using other things. So there's no lock-in on that side, if that's sort of what you're asking, or are you more around the solution side?
Yeah. Both of those.
Yeah, the solution is really just from our validation. Again, I'd love to find out if there's better ways or people are doing something already. That's our kind of humbleness to come out. We are not locked in any way. We've kind of said what we're doing. We're being open early, which is at the risk of being told we're doing it wrong. Absolutely, yeah. Does that answer?
Yeah, that's perfect. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I'm just, first thing, really interesting and excited to be here with lots of other enthusiastic people. Just around there's already data sets out there that we don't know about, or agencies have got stashed away, and building those relationships with agencies who've got geolocation, data, or MB with business data, and you know, that one with the what's left sort of one. So just trying to figure out, you know, what's the projection for building those relationships with existing agencies long term, because that's, you know.
Yeah, no, great question. So one of the things that probably wasn't hugely highlighted, just trying to get through them, and is what's left is the relationship with EB and IR. So for LINZ with the aerial side as well. So absolutely, one of the great things, in particular with the new government, has been pushing the inter-government relationships. So our partners, while we're saying commercially now, we've got partners already. We've got Ralph here from MOT that we're working with around our data sets and validating their needs and types around that, see what data sets they have. Because we don't want to reinvent the wheel as well. And the opportunity with Liz being government data steward, that's the opportunity to look around and see what others are up to, come in and say, hey, we can help you here, in return we can give you some data, blah, 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 trades and things. So we're really opening up the doors from what we're a small team, and I'm really impressed how many connections we have in government agencies, and maybe that's something we should write about and show who we are working with, because it's a great question. Yeah.
I think, it's sharing that story, because there's a lot of people that just, you know, head down those areas and don't realise there's value. They know themselves what value is in the data, but, you know, someone else turns out something else. So that, to me, the gaps of getting the communication going through existing.
One of the uncomfortable comments I often say is stats are not always the experts, and it's not a disrespect to stats. It's just that, absolutely, there are others out there, and when I look at the assurance side, others are releasing their own stats, right? So ultimately, there are stats out there that stats aren't the experts on, and that's kind of what we're out here asking is like, okay, you're doing that, great, we want to learn from you, and we can develop potentially some open stuff back to the community, and then we can work and develop your stuff and make some money together. That would be a great outcome. Good question. Yeah, go on.
Can you just clarify, I got an indication that you were, as part of this, you were to make experts available within the stats. I have particular interest in people are expert in doing complex analytics. Is that the kind of partnership you'd have in mind?
We've got a commercial focus, but ultimately the new front door side is if we're able to, there's something related to, we're working with people, we can identify and go quickly to get someone for you. That's just part of our sort of offering. We would just help connect you inside of Stats and find out. We've often found that there are sometimes people who look to work with us commercially, sometimes they just need a little bit of help and then off they go in that direction. And so for me, it's if we can create another front door, another channel for you to get to the right people at Stats when maybe another channel didn't work, that would work too. If there's a commercial offering behind that, obviously that's our thing, but we're absolutely all about opening up our expertise.
It's a commercial opportunity.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to, I mean, we can talk because we can always discuss and validate and explore. If there is something, because non-commercial, you can always flip it around in an open source environment, right? You can turn that around to, if we've got the expertise on top of something, well, there's the commercial model through the consulting, the expertise. But ultimately, if it's just about the free open data source, that's the way the conversation might start. So ultimately, I'm not going to shut off an opportunity just because it's not commercial, because we never know. Everything's an opportunity. So,
Hi, just curious about criteria at some future point where you're putting in significant capital. Is there a model of expectation where people would be raising additional capital from external ventures, bringing their own? Are you expecting to invest in a pure sweat model where an entrepreneur has put in their own time but doesn't have other sources of wealth? What is your thinking?
Yeah, great. This is one of the experiments we've got around what is the investment that we make. So the investment, one of the things, I don't know if those answer your question, but an example around the IP is we won't create joint IP with you, so we will invest in your IP. We might create some IP ourselves, but we're not going to create that sort of marriage either through a commercial partnership or in terms of like we own part of your IP or any equitable stake. We would look to invest in yours and create a commercial that will allow maybe a use case based on that IP, and that's something you're comfortable with. But ultimately, our investment in terms of funds wouldn't be equity, so we wouldn't ask for a stake in your company. So we would not want to hold your company back. It's probably the best way to summarize it. We'd love to. My ideal situation is we fund whatever that thing is, you build up your IP, we build a customer base, you earn some money, you don't need us anymore and you've grown your company. That would be great. Yeah. Does that answer some of it, or?
I'll just repeat back to you if I understand correctly, which is that you'll declare an amount of money that you're participating in, but that's no strings attached, and that then essentially it's open to people to source external funding or bring their own
Absolutely,
resources,
yeah. We'll bring no rights to that, yeah.
Depending on what's right for them.
And an example I can use is a small company that needs some additional funding to effectively finish the product, which was part funded by someone else. There were no strings attached to that funding. They don't want to go to a VC company because that's going to bring strings to their investment and their ability to direct their company in the future. They want to service government. Government's not looking at it very favourably because it's not a completed product. So we're looking to come there and bring some of our reputation to go, hey, this is what we can add in terms of expertise, so there's something we can add to it to finish it. There's also some funding we can give to it, but ultimately as part of, say, the commercial model of getting some of these customers, we might just go, for this short period or whatever it is, we'll get a return back on our investment or whatnot, but then long-term, no commitment. Again, it's all an experiment, so please don't hold me to this. This is part of the experiment. We're trying to find out what the needs are, whether or not it's us bringing our expertise, us bringing some funding and some expertise, us bringing more funding, which is not favourable. We want to make sure there's something that we bring, and ultimately if it's half funding, whatever it is, that's what we're here to experiment about. So look, everything's a great question, yeah, and I just want to know more, basically. Yeah, thanks. Cool. Well, there's food. There is drink. We're around, obviously, the orange dots on the t-shirts, so that we've got people out the back as well. Please mingle. There is an opportunity to always contact us through the email address. We put our stuff throughout the blog, through Twitter. Please get hold of us. Ultimately, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate your time. I hope we have finished early. We have. So that's an opportunity for you to go home. But please, the food's here. It needs to be eaten. We can't eat it ourselves. And so again, thank you for your time. Cheers.